We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Family Gathering. Blake Morrison sat at the mahogany dining table, his calloused hands folded as he watched his father-in-law Raymond Kellerman distribute envelopes to the grandchildren. The 72-year-old patriarch of the Kellerman fortune moved with theatrical precision, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expensive suit immaculate. "Emma, darling," Raymond cooed to Blake's 14-year-old niece, Nicole's sister's daughter. "Your college fund just got a significant boost." The girl squealed with delight as she opened the envelope, revealing a check for $50,000. Blake's jaw tightened as he glanced at his 8-year-old son Tyler, who sat quietly beside him, dark eyes watching his grandfather with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The boy had inherited Blake's angular features, but Nicole's softer expressions, creating a face that could melt hearts when he smiled. "And Marcus," Raymond continued, addressing Nicole's brother's 12-year-old son, "I've arranged for that summer program in Switzerland you wanted." Another envelope, another life-changing gift. Blake had married into the Kellerman family 5 years ago, bringing with him his son from his first marriage to Lisa, who had died in a car accident when Tyler was 3. The Kellermans had initially welcomed Blake, impressed by his successful security consulting firm and his decorated military background. But Blake had always sensed an undercurrent of disapproval, particularly from Raymond. Nicole squeezed Blake's hand under the table, her wedding ring catching the light from the crystal chandelier. At 34, she was still stunning, blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, blue eyes that had once looked at Blake with genuine love. Now, as he studied her profile, he noticed she avoided his gaze. "Tyler, sweetheart," Raymond's voice cut through Blake's thoughts. "Come here to Grandpa." The boy approached cautiously. Raymond's smile turned cold as he patted Tyler's head with the mechanical affection one might show a neighbor's pet. "You're a good boy, Tyler, but you understand, these trust funds, the cars when you turn 16, the family vacations to Europe, they're for family. Real family." The words hung in the air like poison gas. "You're not really family, son. You're Blake's boy." The silence that followed was deafening. Blake felt his blood temperature drop to Arctic levels, the way it did before he eliminated targets during his years in military intelligence. His wife said nothing. Not a word of defense for her stepson, not even a sharp intake of breath. Tyler's face crumpled for just a moment before he composed himself with dignity that broke Blake's heart. "Understand, Grandpa," the boy whispered, returning to his seat. Blake's mind cataloged every face at the table. Nicole's mother Patricia looked uncomfortable but remained silent. Nicole's siblings exchanged glances but said nothing. His wife, the woman who had promised to love and protect Tyler as her own, stared at her plate. "Actually," Blake said, his voice deadly calm, "Tyler does understand perfectly." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a sealed envelope, sliding it across the polished table to his son. "And I think it's time he gave you something, Raymond." Tyler took the envelope with trembling hands. Blake had prepared this document months ago, after noticing subtle changes in Nicole's behavior, after installing security cameras in their home during a routine upgrade, after discovering things that made his blood run cold. "Tyler," Blake said gently, "remember what I told you? If Grandpa ever hurt you again, you're to give him that envelope." The boy's face brightened with sudden understanding. He stood up and walked to Raymond with newfound confidence. "Grandpa, Dad told me to give this to you if you ever hurt me again." Raymond opened the envelope with irritated curiosity. As his eyes scanned the contents, his face went white, then red, then white again. The document contained photographs, timestamps, and details that made him understand just who Blake Morrison really was and what he was capable of. Raymond's scream echoed through the dining room, a sound of pure terror that would haunt the Kellerman family for years to come. Chapter 2, The Web of Lies. 3 hours after the dinner from hell, Blake sat in his home office, watching security footage on his computer while Tyler slept peacefully upstairs. The boy had handled the evening with remarkable grace, even asking Blake if they could get ice cream on the way home to celebrate Grandpa's surprise. Blake's background wasn't something he discussed at cocktail parties. 12 years in Army intelligence, specializing in psychological operations and information warfare. After Lisa's death, he transitioned to private security consulting, building a legitimate business that served as a front for more specialized services. Governments and corporations paid him extraordinary sums to solve problems that couldn't be handled through conventional channels. The doorbell rang at 11:47 p.m. Blake checked the security monitor. Derek Sullivan stood on his doorstep, looking agitated. Derek was Nicole's college friend who had recently moved back to town, supposedly to start a real estate business. Tall, athletic, with the kind of easy charm that made people trust him immediately. Blake had never liked him. "Blake!" Derek's voice carried a forced casualness as Blake opened the door. "Is Nicole home? I need to talk to her about something urgent." "She's asleep," Blake replied, studying Derek's micro-expressions. Dilated pupils, elevated heart rate visible in his neck pulse, defensive posture. Classic signs of deception and anxiety. "It's about the Whitmore property deal. She asked me to stop by if I heard anything, regardless of the time." Blake knew Nicole had no involvement in any Whitmore property deal. "I'll let her know you stopped by." Derek's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Maybe I could just—" "She's asleep," Blake repeated, his tone carrying the subtle threat of finality. After Derek left, Blake reviewed the security footage from the past 3 months with military precision. The pattern was clear. Nicole leaving the house during Tyler's school hours, returning exactly 43 minutes later. Her phone GPS disabled during these absences. Derek's car spotted in the parking lot of the Riverside Hotel during corresponding time periods. But the real revelation came from the audio surveillance he'd installed in Nicole's car during her last service appointment. The recordings painted a picture that made Blake's blood turn to ice water. "When are you going to tell him?" Derek's voice, recorded 2 weeks earlier. "I can't. Not yet. Blake isn't. He's not someone you just divorce and walk away from. You don't understand what he's capable of." "Then we stick to the plan. The trust fund money, the property investments, will have enough to disappear completely. Start fresh somewhere Blake can never find us." "What about Tyler?" "What about him? He's not your kid, Nicole. You said so yourself. You only married Blake for security after your dad's gambling debts nearly destroyed the family. The kid's just collateral damage." Blake had heard enough. He spent the next hour researching Derek's background, using resources most private citizens couldn't access. What he found was interesting. Derek Sullivan had been married twice before, both marriages ending with mysterious disappearances of marital assets. The man was a predator, and Nicole was his latest mark. But Nicole's betrayal cut deeper than Derek's manipulation. She had used Blake to solve her family's financial problems, used Tyler as a prop in her charade, and now planned to rob them both before vanishing. Blake opened his laptop and began typing. By morning, he would have a comprehensive plan that would make both Derek and Nicole understand what happened when someone betrayed Blake Morrison. The document he'd given Raymond was just the opening move. He glanced at Tyler's photo on his desk. His son deserved better than this family of liars and parasites. And Blake would make sure he got it, no matter the cost. Chapter 3. The Revelation. Blake woke at 0500 hours, as he had every day for the past 15 years. Military habits died hard, and this morning he was grateful for the discipline. Today would require surgical precision. Nicole was still asleep, her blonde hair fanned across the pillow. She looked peaceful, innocent even. Blake studied her face, remembering the woman he'd thought he married. Kind, loving, someone who had promised to be a mother to Tyler. The reality was more complex and infinitely more dangerous. He moved silently through his morning routine, preparing Tyler's breakfast and packing his lunch. The boy appeared at 0630, sleep-tousled and still processing the events of the previous evening. "Dad," Tyler said as he ate his cereal, "why did Grandpa scream like that?" Blake sat down across from his son, choosing his words carefully. "Sometimes people get scared when they realize they've made a mistake, buddy. Your grandfather learned something about himself last night that he didn't like. Are we in trouble? You and I? Never. We're a team, remember? Morrison men stick together." Tyler's smile could have powered the house. Morris and men stick together, he repeated solemnly. After dropping Tyler at school, Blake returned home to find Nicole in the kitchen, wearing the silk robe he'd bought her for their anniversary. She looked nervous, which was smart of her. Blake, about last night. What about it? He poured himself coffee, his tone neutral. Dad was out of line. Tyler is family, and I should have said something. Blake turned to face her, noting the slight tremor in her hands, the way she couldn't maintain eye contact. Should have, yes. But you didn't. I was shocked. I didn't know how to respond. You knew exactly how to respond, Nicole. You chose not to. She moved closer, placing her hand on his chest in a gesture that once would have comforted him. Now it felt like a snake coiling around his heart. Let me make it up to both of you. I'll talk to Dad today, demand he apologize to Tyler, and include him in everything. I'll threaten to cut contact if he doesn't. Blake studied her face, marveling at how convincing she could be. If he hadn't heard the recordings, seen the evidence, he might have believed her. That's very generous, he said finally. Relief flooded her features. I love you, Blake. And I love Tyler. This family means everything to me. I know exactly what this family means to you, Nicole. Something in his tone made her step back, but before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Blake answered it to find a courier with an envelope addressed to Nicole. Mrs. Morrison, I need your signature. Nicole signed for the package with shaking hands. Inside was a single photograph and a note. Blake watched her face drain of color as she saw Derek's car at the Riverside Hotel, timestamp clearly visible. The note was simple. We need to talk. All three of us. Tonight, 8 p.m., the warehouse on Industrial Boulevard. Come alone, both of you. Tyler will be safe at his sleepover at the Matthews house, which I've already arranged. P.S. Derek's marriage history makes for fascinating reading. Nicole looked up at Blake, and for the first time since he'd known her, she looked genuinely terrified. Blake, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You've always been good with words. He took the photograph from her trembling hands. But I think it's time for the truth, don't you? All of it. The warehouse meeting would be where everything came to light. Blake had spent months preparing for this moment, and tonight, Nicole and Derek would discover what happened when someone tried to manipulate a man who had spent years perfecting the art of psychological warfare. But first, he had a phone call to make to Tyler's teacher, confirming the sleepover that would keep his son safely away from what was about to unfold. Morris and men stuck together, and Blake would do whatever it took to protect the only family that truly mattered. Chapter 4. The Architect of Ruin. Blake Morrison's warehouse sat in the industrial district like a tomb waiting for its occupants. He'd purchased the building 3 years earlier through a shell company, officially for storage of his security consulting equipment. Unofficially, it served as a place where Blake could work on problems that required privacy. At 1900 hours, Blake made his final preparations. The warehouse was equipped with soundproofing that would make a recording studio jealous, security cameras with night vision capabilities, and enough backup power to run independently for weeks. What Nicole and Derek didn't know was that this meeting had been planned for months, ever since Blake first suspected his wife's betrayal. His phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Having fun at Tommy's. His mom made pizza shaped like dinosaurs. Love you, Dad. Blake smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. After tonight, Tyler would never have to endure another moment of the Kellerman family's toxic dysfunction. Blake would make sure of that. The sound of car engines announced the arrival of his guests. Through the security monitors, Blake watched Nicole and Derek exit their respective vehicles. Nicole wore a black dress that Blake had once told her made her look stunning. Derek was in a suit, probably thinking he could intimidate or charm his way out of whatever was coming. They were about to learn that Blake Morrison was neither intimidated nor charmed by anything. Blake opened the warehouse door as they approached. The vast space was dimly lit, with 3 chairs arranged in the center under a single bright light. It had the theatrical quality of an interrogation room, which was exactly what Blake intended. Please sit, Blake said, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. Derek glanced around nervously. Blake, man, I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Blake remained standing, positioning himself where he could watch both of their faces. I know about the affair. I know about the plan to steal money from Nicole's trust fund. I know about your history. Derek, 2 previous wives, both of whom discovered their assets mysteriously vanishing around the time you disappeared from their lives. Nicole's face went white. Blake, please. I know you married me to solve your family's debt problems, Nicole. I know you've been lying about loving Tyler, about wanting to be his mother. I have recordings of every conversation you've had in your car for the past 3 months. Derek started to stand, but Blake's gaze froze him in place. There was something in Blake's eyes that spoke of violence held in check by the thinnest of margins. Here's what's going to happen, Blake continued, his voice conversational. Derek, you're going to return every penny you've manipulated from Nicole, plus interest. You're also going to transfer ownership of the properties you purchased with stolen money to a trust fund for Tyler. You can't prove anything, Derek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Blake smiled, the expression more terrifying than any scowl. I don't need to prove anything to a court, Derek. I just need to prove it to the people who matter. Your business partners, for instance. The ones who don't know about your creative financing methods. He clicked a remote, and a large monitor descended from the ceiling. The screen displayed financial records, photographs, and what appeared to be surveillance footage of Derek entering and leaving various locations. Nicole, you're going to sign divorce papers tonight. You'll receive exactly what you brought into this marriage. Nothing. Tyler will remain with me, and you'll relinquish all parental claims. I won't sign anything, Nicole said, finding her voice. You can't force me to. Your father's gambling debts, Blake interrupted. The ones I paid off to save your family from bankruptcy? They're going to resurface. With interest. And I have documentation showing that the money I used came from my security business, which means those debts are now legally tied to certain international obligations that your father definitely cannot repay. The color drained from Nicole's face completely. Blake's security business did indeed have international clients, the kind who collected debts through methods that didn't involve lawyers. You're insane, Derek whispered. I'm thorough, Blake corrected. I'm also patient, methodical, and utterly without mercy when someone threatens what I love. And I love exactly 2 people on this planet, my son Tyler and the memory of his mother Lisa. Blake walked to a wall panel and opened it, revealing a collection of photographs and documents. Derek, your real name is David Kramer. You've been running marriage scams for 8 years. Your first wife, Jennifer, didn't leave you. She's in a mental health facility in Nevada, convinced she's lost her mind because her husband and all her money vanished on the same day. Derek's composure cracked completely. How could you possibly? Your second wife, Maria, moved back to Mexico believing she was cursed. Interesting pattern. You don't just steal money, you psychologically destroy these women so they won't come looking for you. Blake turned to Nicole. Did he tell you about them? About what he does to women who trust him? Nicole looked at Derek with dawning horror. You said you'd been married before, but you told me they were amicable divorces. He lied, Nicole. Just like you lied to me. Just like you both lied to Tyler every time you pretended to care about him. The warehouse fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Blake watched as his wife and her lover processed the reality of their situation. They had tried to manipulate a predator, and now they were discovering what that felt like from the prey's perspective. I have a counter-proposal, Blake said finally. Derek, you disappear tonight. Forever. I don't care where you go, but if I ever see you again, if you ever contact Nicole again, if you ever run another marriage scam, I will personally ensure that Jennifer and Maria learn exactly where to find you. And I'll make sure they have the resources to express their feelings appropriately. Derek nodded frantically. I'll leave. Tonight. I swear. Nicole, you have a choice. Sign the divorce papers, take nothing, and walk away quietly. Or I release everything I have about your family to the IRS, the FBI, and several other agencies that take a dim view of the creative accounting methods your father used to hide his gambling losses. Blake's phone chimed with another text from Tyler. Dad, Tommy's mom wants to know if you want her to save you some pizza. Blake typed back, tell her thank you, but Dad's having dinner with some people who are about to lose their appetite. When he looked up, both Nicole and Derek were staring at him with pure terror. You have until tomorrow at noon to make your decisions, Blake said. After that, I implement Plan B. And trust me, you don't want to know what Plan B looks like. Chapter 5. The Psychological Minefield. Blake didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his home office, monitoring the surveillance feeds he'd placed on both Nicole and Derek's properties months earlier. Predictable as clockwork, Derek had gone home and immediately started packing. By 0300 hours, his car was loaded and heading toward the interstate. One problem solved, one remaining. Nicole had returned to their house and spent the night pacing, making phone calls and crying. Blake watched her through the bedroom security camera as she called her father, her siblings, even her mother, but no one answered. Blake had made sure of that by timing his revelation for when Raymond would be on his weekly poker night, a high-stakes game where phones were confiscated to prevent cheating. At 0700 hours, Blake prepared breakfast for one. Nicole appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking like she'd aged a decade overnight. "Blake, we need to talk." "No," he said without looking up from his coffee. "We don't. You need to decide, and I need to pick up Tyler from his sleepover. Please, just listen." Blake turned to face her, and whatever she saw in his expression made her step backward. "I listened for 3 months, Nicole. I listened to you lie to my face while you planned to rob me and abandon my son. I listened to you tell Derek that Tyler was just collateral damage. I listened to you laugh about how easy it was to manipulate me into paying your family's debts." His voice remained calm, conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying. "The time for listening is over." Nicole's phone rang. She answered it with shaking hands, putting it on speaker. Her father's voice filled the kitchen, wild with panic. "Nicole, what the hell did you do? My poker game got raided last night. FBI, IRS, everybody. They're saying I owe millions in back taxes and penalties. They froze all my accounts." Blake smiled slightly. The poker game raid was a beautiful piece of coordination, requiring only a few well-placed calls to the right people and some carefully leaked information about Raymond's creative bookkeeping methods. "Dad, and Derek Sullivan, or whatever his real name is. He's disappeared. His real estate office is empty, his bank account closed. There are women calling, saying he stole their life savings. What kind of man were you involved with?" Nicole looked at Blake with growing horror as the scope of his planning became clear. "I have to go, Dad," she whispered, ending the call. "He'll be fine," Blake said conversationally. "Eventually, the gambling debts are real, but they're manageable if he cooperates with the investigation and pays his taxes like a good citizen. The alternative is less pleasant." Blake's phone rang. Tyler's excited voice filled the kitchen through the speaker. "Dad, Mrs. Matthews says you can come get me anytime. We made pancakes shaped like Batman." "I'll be there in an hour, buddy. Did you remember to thank Mrs. Matthews for letting you stay over?" "Already did. She says I have really good manners. She also says if you ever need help with me, she'd be happy to babysit anytime because I'm a delight." Blake felt genuine warmth for the first time in hours. "You are indeed a delight. I'll see you soon." After ending the call, Blake found Nicole staring at him with a mixture of fear and something that might have been respect. "You planned all of this," she said. "From the beginning, I planned for the possibility. I hoped I was wrong." Blake finished his coffee and rinsed the cup. "But I've learned that when you love someone, you prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. What happens to me? That depends entirely on what you choose. Sign the papers, and you walk away with your freedom and a chance to rebuild your life honestly. Refuse, and you'll discover that I have a very long reach and an even longer memory." Blake checked his watch. "You have 3 hours to decide. I'm going to get Tyler, and we're going to have a normal Saturday, playground, ice cream, maybe a movie. When we get home, I expect to find either signed divorce papers or an empty house." He headed toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Nicole, if you're thinking about running, remember that Derek thought the same thing. Ask yourself, if I could orchestrate his disappearance and your father's problems overnight, what exactly do you think I can do with more time?" As Blake drove toward Tyler's sleepover, he reflected on the psychology of betrayal. People like Nicole and Derek operated under the assumption that others shared their flexible relationship with truth and loyalty. They couldn't comprehend someone who planned for betrayal not out of cynicism, but out of love. Tyler deserved a father who would protect him from the sharks of the world. And Blake Morrison had spent his entire adult life learning how to hunt sharks. Chapter 6: The Point of No Return. Tyler bounced in the passenger seat as they drove home from their perfect Saturday, chattering about Batman pancakes and the fort he'd built with Tommy Matthews. Blake listened with genuine attention, filing away every detail. These moments, pure, honest, filled with a child's unguarded joy, were what made everything else worthwhile. "Dad, why do you think Grandpa Raymond was so mean last night?" Blake considered his answer carefully. "Some people are afraid of love they can't control, buddy. Your grandfather is used to people wanting things from him. So when he meets someone who doesn't, it scares him. Do you want things from him?" "I want him to treat you with respect. That's all." Tyler nodded solemnly. "Tommy's grandpa taught him how to fish. He says grandpas are supposed to teach you stuff and take you places and brag about you to their friends." Blake's jaw tightened. "Maybe we'll find you a better grandpa." As they pulled into their driveway, Blake noticed Nicole's car was still there. He also noticed the additional vehicle parked across the street, a black SUV with government plates. "Interesting. Tyler, run inside and get cleaned up. Then we'll decide what movie to watch." Blake waited until Tyler was inside before approaching the SUV. The window rolled down to reveal Agent Sarah Hendricks, an old colleague from his military intelligence days. "Blake, heard you've been stirring up some federal databases lately." "Sarah, lovely to see you. How's the Bureau treating you?" "Can't complain. Though I have to ask, Raymond Kellerman? Really? The man hasn't filed an honest tax return since the Clinton administration." Blake smiled. "Shocking. I had no idea." "Of course you didn't." Sarah's expression turned serious. "We've also got reports about a Derek Sullivan, real name David Kramer, who seems to have vanished in a thin air just as several federal agencies were taking interest in his activities. Tragic. I hope he's somewhere warm." "Blake, what are you doing?" "Protecting my son from people who would use him and discard him. Nothing more, nothing less." Sarah studied his face. "The old Blake Morrison I knew would have just quietly filed for divorce and moved on. The old Blake Morrison didn't have Tyler." After Sarah drove away, Blake entered his house to find Nicole in the living room, divorce papers spread across the coffee table. She was signing each page with mechanical precision, tears streaming down her face. Tyler ran down the stairs, freshly showered and wearing his favorite Superman pajamas. He stopped when he saw Nicole crying. "Nicole, are you okay?" She looked up at the boy she'd pretended to love, the child she'd planned to abandon, and for a moment her composure cracked completely. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just saying goodbye." Tyler looked confused. "Are you going somewhere?" Blake stepped forward. "Nicole has decided she needs to go live somewhere else for a while. It doesn't have anything to do with you, buddy. Sometimes adults make choices that are hard to understand." Nicole finished signing the papers and stood. She walked over to Tyler and knelt down to his level. "Tyler, I want you to know that you deserve all the love in the world. Your dad loves you more than anything, and you should never forget that." For a moment, Blake saw a flicker of the woman he'd thought he married, the one who might have genuinely cared for Tyler if her own greed hadn't gotten in the way. "Will I see you again?" Tyler asked. Nicole glanced at Blake, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Maybe someday," she whispered, then kissed Tyler's forehead. "Be good for your dad, okay?" After Nicole left, Tyler curled up next to Blake on the couch, clearly confused but not devastated. Blake realized that Nicole's emotional distance over the past months had already prepared Tyler for her absence. "Dad, are we going to be okay?" "Just us." Blake pulled his son closer. "We're going to be better than okay. We're going to be free." "Morrison men stick together," Tyler said sleepily. "Always," Blake confirmed. As Tyler fell asleep against his shoulder, Blake's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You've made enemies, Blake. Watch your back." Blake deleted the message without concern. He'd been making enemies his entire adult life, and he was still here while most of them weren't. What mattered now was building a future where Tyler would never again be subjected to people who saw him as disposable. The war was far from over, but Blake had won the first major battle. and he was just getting started. Chapter 7. Ghosts and Consequences. 3 months after Nicole signed the divorce papers, Blake's life had settled into a rhythm that worked. Tyler thrived without the underlying tension that had permeated their house during Nicole's final months. They'd established new routines: Saturday morning fishing trips, Thursday night pizza and homework sessions, bedtime stories that Blake sometimes made up featuring a boy detective who always outsmarted the bad guys. But Blake knew better than to mistake calm for peace. People like Raymond Kellerman and the network Nicole had belonged to didn't simply accept defeat and move on. They regrouped, planned, and struck back when their targets felt safe. The first sign of retaliation came on a Tuesday morning when Blake Security Consulting business suddenly lost 3 major contracts in a single day. The stated reasons were budget restructuring and strategic realignment, but Blake recognized the coordinated nature of the attacks. Someone with significant influence was pressuring his clients. The second sign was Tyler coming home from school with a black eye. "What happened?" Blake asked, kneeling to examine his son's face. "Some kids at school said their parents told them my family are criminals. Marcus, Aunt Emma's son, he said you made Grandpa Raymond lose all his money, and that makes me a thief's kid." Blake felt the familiar coldness settle over him, the temperature drop that preceded violence. But Tyler needed comfort, not revenge. "Not yet. What did you do?" "I told them you're the best dad in the world, and they don't know what they're talking about. Then Marcus pushed me, so I pushed him back." Tyler looked worried. "Did I do the right thing?" "You defended your family. That's always right." Blake hugged his son gently. "But I think it's time we had a conversation with Marcus's parents." That evening, Blake received a call from Nicole's sister Emma. "Blake, I think we need to talk." "About Marcus giving Tyler a black eye?" "Yes, I think we do." "About your systematic destruction of our family. Dad's in the hospital, stress-induced heart attack. Mom's had to sell the house. And now Nicole. No one's heard from her in weeks." Blake's voice remained neutral. "I'm sorry to hear about Raymond's health. As for Nicole, she made her choices." "Choices?" Emma's voice rose. "You manipulated her into signing away her rights to Tyler, then terrorized her into disappearing. I gave her evidence of her affair and embezzlement plans, then offered her a clean exit. She took it. You destroyed her life. She destroyed her own life when she chose to betray the people who loved her." There was a long silence before Emma spoke again, her voice colder now. "You made enemies, Blake. Our family has resources, connections. You might want to remember that." "Emma," Blake said quietly, "you might want to remember that I've spent my career dealing with people who think they're untouchable because of their resources and connections. It never ends well for them." After ending the call, Blake did what he always did when threatened. He gathered intelligence. Within hours, he had a complete picture of the Kellerman family's current situation and their likely next moves. Raymond was indeed in the hospital, but his heart attack had been triggered by FBI raids on his properties and the discovery of decades of tax evasion and money laundering. The man's gambling debts were the least of his problems now. Emma and her husband were coordinating a campaign to turn Tyler's school community against Blake, spreading rumors about his business and his violent background. They'd also hired a private investigator to find evidence of wrongdoing they could use against him. Most interesting was what Blake discovered about Nicole's current location. She hadn't vanished. She was living in a small apartment across town, working as a waitress and attending community college. She'd honored their agreement and stayed away from Tyler, but someone was watching her, reporting her activities back to the Kellerman family. Blake realized that the Kellermans were using Nicole as bait, hoping Blake would contact her and give them evidence of continued harassment or manipulation. They didn't understand that Blake had no interest in Nicole's new life as long as she stayed away from Tyler. But they were about to learn that using Tyler as a weapon against Blake was the gravest mistake they could make. Chapter 8. The Hunted. Blake's counterstrike began at dawn on Friday morning. He'd spent the night preparing, and by the time Tyler left for school, Blake had already initiated a sequence of events that would remind the Kellerman family why challenging him had been a catastrophic error in judgment. The first call went to Agent Sarah Hendricks at the FBI. "Sarah, I have information about a private investigator named Jim Castellanos who's been conducting illegal surveillance and harassment operations targeting federal witnesses. Blake, what are you? Jim's been hired by the Kellerman family to build a case against me. The problem is, some of his surveillance involves Tyler, and Tyler is technically under federal protection due to his connection to my previous intelligence work. This was true, though Blake had never mentioned it to anyone. Tyler's status as the child of a former intelligence operative automatically qualified him for certain protections, especially when foreign nationals were involved, which they were given Blake's international client base. I'll look into it, Sarah said. I'd recommend moving quickly. Jim's been photographing Tyler at school, following him to friends' houses. If anything happens to my son because the Bureau failed to protect him, Blake didn't need to finish the threat. Sarah understood that Blake Morrison with a grievance was exponentially more dangerous than Blake Morrison conducting business. The second call went to Tommy Matthews' mother, whose husband happened to be the superintendent of Tyler School District. Mrs. Matthews, this is Blake Morrison. I wanted to thank you again for including Tyler in so many activities with Tommy. He's a wonderful boy, Blake. Tommy adores him. I'm glad. Unfortunately, we're dealing with some family drama that might spill over into the school environment. Tyler's mother's family is, let's say, they're having legal troubles and they're trying to deflect blame onto Tyler and me. If anyone approaches you or the school with allegations about our family, I'd appreciate a call before any action is taken. Of course, has Tyler been having problems at school? Some children have been repeating things their parents told them. Marcus Kellerman gave Tyler a black eye yesterday. Mrs. Matthews' voice went cold. I wasn't aware of that. I'll speak to my husband immediately. Blake's third call was to his lawyer, instructing him to file restraining orders against Emma Kellerman and her husband, citing harassment of a minor and coordination of a bullying campaign. By noon, Blake had constructed a protective web around Tyler that would make any further attacks both difficult and legally dangerous for the Kellermans. But protection was only the first phase. The second phase began when Blake accessed the private investigator's computer systems, a skill he'd maintained from his intelligence days. What he found was a goldmine of illegal activity. Jim Castellanos hadn't just been hired by the Kellermans. He'd been conducting similar harassment campaigns for other wealthy families, targeting ex-spouses, business rivals, and whistleblowers. Blake packaged this information and delivered it to 3 different law enforcement agencies, the state licensing board, and 2 investigative journalists. By evening, Jim Castellanos was in federal custody, and the families who'd hired him were facing their own investigations. Emma Kellerman called Blake that night, her voice shaking with rage. You son of a bitch. Jim's been arrested, and now the FBI is asking us questions about Tyler. What did you tell them? The truth. That your family hired someone to stalk and photograph my 8-year-old son. We were gathering evidence. You were committing felonies. Blake's voice was arctic. Emma, I gave your family every opportunity to walk away with dignity. Raymond brought this on himself with his criminal financial activities. Nicole brought it on herself with her affair and theft plans. And now you've brought it on yourself by targeting Tyler. This isn't over, Blake. We have lawyers, connections. Your lawyers can't help you now. Your connections are too busy dealing with their own FBI investigations. And Emma, the next time someone lays a hand on Tyler, the next time someone makes him cry because of your family's vendetta, I will demonstrate why people in my former profession are trained to disappear problems permanently. Blake ended the call and checked on Tyler, who was sleeping peacefully with a book about sharks still open on his chest. The boy's black eye was healing, but the incident had marked a line in Blake's mind, a line the Kellermans had crossed at their own peril. The war was escalating, but Blake had always excelled at escalation. The Kellermans were about to discover that some enemies were better left unmade. Chapter 9. The Final Checkmate. 6 months after the warehouse confrontation, Blake stood in the courthouse, watching Raymond Kellerman shuffle past in an orange jumpsuit, his wrists shackled. The once proud patriarch looked broken, aged decades by his fall from grace. Their eyes met briefly, and Blake saw recognition there. The understanding that this was Blake's design, his revenge, perfectly executed over time. Raymond had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for tax evasion, money laundering, and racketeering. The FBI investigation had uncovered a network of illegal gambling operations, corrupt political donations, and shell companies stretching back 20 years. The evidence had been meticulously compiled and anonymously delivered to law enforcement, piece by piece, ensuring Raymond couldn't escape through legal technicalities. Emma and her husband had fled to Canada after their own indictments came down, leaving Marcus with his grandmother. Nicole's mother, Patricia, had moved to a nursing home, her remaining assets seized to pay restitution for Raymond's crimes. As for Nicole herself, Blake had kept tabs on her from a distance. She'd finished her community college program and was working as a bookkeeper for a small nonprofit. She'd never attempted to contact Tyler, honoring their agreement. Blake respected that choice, even if he could never forgive her betrayal. Tyler, now 9, thrived in their new life together. The black eye was long healed, and the boy rarely asked about his former family anymore. He'd made new friends, excelled in school, and developed a passion for chess that reminded Blake of his own strategic mind. "Dad," Tyler said as they walked from the courthouse. "Was that really Grandpa Raymond?" "Yes." He looked sad. Blake stopped and knelt to Tyler's level. "Sometimes people make choices that lead to sad endings, buddy. But that's not our concern anymore. Our concern is building a good life together. Are we safe now?" Blake smiled, ruffling Tyler's hair. "We're safe. More than safe, we're free." That evening, Blake received an unexpected visitor. Nicole stood on his doorstep, looking nothing like the woman who'd once lived in his house. She was thinner, dressed simply, her hair shorter and darker. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Honesty, maybe, or the weight of genuine remorse. "I heard about the sentencing," she said. "I wanted to thank you. Thank me for not destroying me the way you destroyed everyone else. For giving me a chance to rebuild." Blake studied her face, looking for deception out of habit. He found none. "You honored our agreement. That mattered. How is Tyler?" "Happy. Healthy. Better off without the toxic influences in his life." Nicole nodded, tears starting to form. Could you tell him that I think about him? That I hope he's doing well?" "No," Blake said simply. "He's moved on, Nicole. You need to do the same." She wiped her eyes and nodded again. "I know. I wanted you to know that leaving him was the hardest thing I've ever done. I know I don't have the right to feel that way after what I did, but it's true. Perhaps that means you're becoming a better person. I'm trying to be. The woman she was selfish and weak and cruel. I don't want to be her anymore." Blake watched Nicole walk away, disappearing into the night like a ghost of his former life. He felt no satisfaction in her pain, no triumph in her isolation. She'd made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences, just as Raymond rotted in prison and Emma lived as a fugitive. Inside the house, Tyler was at the kitchen table, working on a chess problem Blake had given him. "Dad, I think I figured it out. If white moves the knight here, then black has to sacrifice the queen to avoid checkmate." Blake examined the board. Tyler's solution was elegant, ruthless, and completely correct. "Excellent work. You're thinking like a true strategist. You taught me that sometimes you have to sacrifice pieces to protect what's really important." Blake sat down across from his son, marveling at the boy's natural intelligence and moral clarity. Tyler would never suffer the betrayals Blake had endured, because Blake would ensure his son learned early how to recognize predators and respond to threats. What's really important, Tyler? Family. Real family. People who love you and protect you and never give up on you. That's right. Morrison men stick together. Always, Tyler confirmed, then grinned. "Want to play another game? I think I can beat you this time." Blake laughed, genuinely happy for the first time in years. "You're welcome to try." As they reset the chessboard, Blake reflected on the long journey that had brought them to this moment. He dismantled the Kellerman family empire piece by piece, removed every threat to Tyler's well-being, and created a safe space where his son could grow into the exceptional man Blake knew he would become. The boy who had once been rejected and humiliated at a family dinner was now confident, loved, and protected. The document Tyler had delivered that night had been Blake's declaration of war. But this moment, watching his son plan chess strategies with the focused intensity of a master. This was Blake's victory. Outside, the world continued its chaotic dance of betrayal and consequence. But inside Blake Morrison's house, two people who truly loved each other prepared for another game, another laugh, another perfect evening in a life built on loyalty, protection, and the unbreakable bond between a father and son. Morrison men stuck together. Always. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.